Hello, I'm Alex from Annie Best Recaps, and I'd love to tell you a story. The story begins with a boy named RL, about to be blessed with a class. His parents are super nervous, hoping he gets the most powerful skills. In this world, when a person turns 10, they are bestowed a class from a goddess in a blessing ritual. Ariel's sister reminds him that lineage plays a huge role in what class you get, which is great for him since his parents are famous. His father is the Archmage Leon, and his mother is known as the Sword Princess Farah. With such badass parents, expectations for Ariel are sky high. He closes his eyes for the blessing, but he sees absolutely nothing. The priest, confused, shocks everyone by revealing that Ariel must be classless. Later, his parents try to console him, saying he doesn't need to worry and that they'll simply work past retirement age so he doesn't have to get a job. Ariel doesn't like that kind of talk and says he doesn't plan on living off of them forever. In fact, he's not bothered at all, since he's been training in swordsmanship since he was little. He believes in the power of hard work, and you can bet the work was hard because his mother never took it easy on him. At the practice field, some kids are bragging about how their skills make their bodies move on their own. They mock Ariel for being classless, and he explains he's just there to train like everyone else. One of the snotty kids retorts that they aren't training, they are swordsmen because of their class. Ariel asks to spar against one of them, and the guys burst into laughter. Still, annoyed by his confidence, they accept. Before they start, they confirm that Ariel has divine protection, a blessing everyone gets at birth that works like a damage-absorbing shield. The kid is glad to hear this because it means he can beat him to a pulp without ending his life. The punk goes in for the first attack, but is shocked when Ariel holds his own. He tries again and again, with no success. Seeing the difficulty, his friend suggests they gang up on Ariel. The spineless kids attack at the same time, but our protag, Ariel, likes a challenge. He notices the boys aren't coordinated, making it clear they have no teamwork skills. Seeing they wouldn't be much of a challenge, Ariel decides to end the nonsense. He takes one of the kids out easily, and when the second one gets mad, he wipes him out too. Ariel declares victory, but the boys refuse to accept it. They were about to try again, but a red-headed swordsman stops them. He points out that real enemies don't accept whining, and that real swordsmen know better. One of the kids is ready to fight him too, but the other explains that this redhead is a big deal. His name is Ray, and he deduces that Ariel must have inherited some talent from his mother because nothing else explains why a no class could fight so well. However, Ray points out that Ariel just beat up on some chumps, so he shouldn't let it get to his head. If he wants a real challenge, he should fight him.
The kids gossip that he's related to the head of the guard, and Ray confirms his father is Captain Evans. At that moment, Ariel remembers this guy. He's the one who keeps coming to this house to ask his mom for help hunting demons. Ariel never thought much of the guy, but this just infuriates Ray. His father is a master swordsman, but despite all that, Ariel's mother is still considered the #1 swordswoman in the village. It's pretty clear to Ariel now that this kid is mad at his mom and is planning to take it out on him. Ray explains that children inherit their parents' talents, so he will beat Ariel to prove his family is stronger. The talking is over and the two guys clash blades, while the other kids watch in amazement. To them, it's like clashing thunderstorms. How can a classless kid hold his own against someone with intermediate skills? As they fight, Ariel notes that Ray is way stronger than the others, but his rage is making his strikes sloppy. He takes advantage of this to find an opening, but Ray uses his twin blade slice to push Ariel back. Ray is impressed that he managed to block the first strike, but the second one lands clean. Ariel is shocked. He can't understand how Ray was able to attack from two places at once. The answer is simple. It was an attack skill. Twin Blade Slice unleashes 2 strikes in one swing, and someone with no class like Ariel couldn't even dream of defending against it. Ray acknowledges that Ariel has guts, but that this is as far as he can go. The next morning, Ariel tells his family he plans on doing more special training. His sister Esther says he doesn't need to work so hard, but our protag isn't interested and leaves. Esther's worried since he's been staying out late training ever since he came home all beat up. Their mother Farah takes her outside and shows her a chest full of broken swords. These are all the practice swords Ariel's using, making it clear that the fight lit a fire under him. In the woods, Ariel once again practices his strikes and demonstrates what he's been working on, the twin blade slice. and he's pleased when he lands it. This is when we learn that he fought Ray for hours and took several hits from the skill on purpose so he could learn it. Just then, a foolish goblin tries to sneak up on him, but just gets obliterated by Arel's new technique. He prepares to continue training, but is shocked when he hears a loud monster roar. He rushes off to alert the guards, but stops when he hears someone scream. He finds that the scream was from Ray, who seems to have been attacked by an extremely large goblin while training. Arel knows the danger. He needs to focus. Timing will be everything. Ray is giving up hope, apologizing to his father for failing. However, just then he's shocked when the monster gets struck by an attack. It was Arel, glad that his timing worked. But Ray isn't doing so well. His divine protection has run out, and he needs holy water immediately. Unfortunately, his was ruined, so Arel lets him have his. This does the trick and Ray recovers, but the only thing on his mind is what that technique was that Arel just used. Arel explains it was the twin blade slice, but Ray is insulted and refuses to believe it. The skill is a complex move that his family can only pull off because they have the skill. Arel agrees that it's complex, but that just meant he needed to dedicate more time and effort to learning it. Ray has no clue what he means, so he simplifies it for him. Anyone with enough strength and speed can do it as long as they get the timing right. What's ironic is that Ray is the whole reason Arel was even able to figure this out. Seeing and experiencing it over and over again is how he learned. Ray finally accepts it and decides that if that's really Arel's goal, then they should have their rematch right now. The battle begins shortly after, and Ray is stunned when his slashes get deflected by Arel's. Even more shocking, however, is that something strikes him, and Arel reveals that it was the third slash. Ray is furious because the attack's name clearly says there should only be 2 strikes, but Arel says that he isn't limited like Ray is. His twin blade slice isn't based on a skill, so it has no restrictions. Unlike Ray, Arel can change it up as much as he wants, depending on how hard he works. Ray has a hard time accepting all this and just boils it down to nothing more than classless fakery. Arel says they just have to keep testing who is stronger, and Ray is completely on board. Ray tries to watch the attack carefully to see the third strike, but Arel is just too fast. Arel wins once again, and points out that this is just like their first fight, except that Ray is the one on the ground this time. All Ray wants to know is why Arel's sword was faster again. Arel explains that his rapid improvement is all thanks to Ray. After seeing and experiencing Ray's refined technique up close again, Arel adjusted his swing and improved it. Ray finally comes to terms with his crushing defeat, and Arel finally claims his victory. A few days later, Arel's parents discuss how Ray has set off to the City of Swords. Fairy used to work there years ago. The place sounds amazing to Arel, so he hopes to go there one day. Of course, he has no class, so we can only wonder how strong he can get without one, and he wants to find out.
Fast forward 5 years, and we catch up with our hero, Errol, now older and on his way to the city of Brescia in a carriage. Midway through the trip, while crossing a forest, the driver announces they'll reach their destination right after climbing a hill. At that point, a woman in the carriage, all curious, asks if everyone is heading to the same place. Well, it turns out a barbarian swordsman traveling with them shuts her down cold. Confused, she asks why he's so angry, and the guy, being a total jerk, points at her outfit, which was, let's just say, very revealing. The girl gets all defensive, explaining that less clothing is ideal for her dual-wielding swordsman class. Things get heated in an instant, and the 2 swordsmen start arguing. The carriage driver, watching the drama unfold, even makes a comment about the offensive power of their advanced classes. But suddenly he slams on the brakes. A whole horde of wild orcs appears in front of them, and the driver, with a smirk, tells the 2 of them to prove all that power they were talking about. And then, my friends, all that bravado just melts away. The 2 swordsmen totally freak out when the Orc King stands up in the middle of the horde. A terrified lady grabs the barbarian's arm, but he shoves her away and makes her run for it to save his own skin. The dual-wielding woman also flees, and the driver decides the best course of action is to get the heck out of there too. However, in the middle of all this chaos, Errol calmly stands up and charges straight for the orcs. And what does he do? He doesn't even flinch. He starts tearing through the monsters, and from a distance, the driver notices his blink dash skill. But the orcs surround Errol, and for a second, the driver thinks, well, he's done for. But in the next instant, Errol spins into a whirlwind of pure destruction, cutting down everyone around him. The driver's jaw hits the floor as he instantly recognizes the blade dance, the legendary technique of the Sword Princess. He's completely baffled, wondering how Errol can use a skill from an exclusively female class. In front of everyone, Errol dodges the Orc King's heavy weapon. leaps over its head and drives his sword straight through the beast's skull, which collapses lifelessly to the ground. After the show, he calmly returns to the carriage and asks the driver to continue the journey. When Errol mentions he wants to go to Brescia to get stronger, the driver can only think that he's already way too overpowered. An excited young passenger asks what his class is, and Errol floors everyone by revealing he's completely classless. And that's when we get a quick flashback that explains everything. 5 years ago, Errol showed his mother the twin slice skill he learned from the redhead girl. Her mom thought she was dreaming, but Errol explained he was learning skills even without a class. That's when he asked her to teach him the sword princess techniques before he left to train in Brescia. Errol's mom, bursting with pride over her son's talent, immediately ran off to brag about him to the rest of the family. Back in the present, Errol's dream is cut short by the driver, who tells him they've arrived. Errol looks around and notices the insane number of swordsmen in the city, sensing the presence of many with advanced classes. He asks the driver what his class is, but the guy tries to play it cool, saying he's just a normal dude. But Errol is sharp and points out that the driver understood his skills perfectly, so he must be pretty strong himself. Cornered, the driver reveals he's actually an advanced holy knight. Errol, curious, asks why a powerful guy like him is driving a carriage. The driver explains that when he gets tired of fighting, he takes breaks by doing these normal trips. Errol understands that breaks from training are important too. Then the knight gives him the lowdown. The best way to start is to join a sword guild. He reveals that the city hosts tons of swordsmanship tournaments where you can win some serious cash, but to participate, you need to be a guild member. Errol agrees to the plan, already getting excited about the idea of fighting stronger opponents. The driver, however, warns him to be careful because there are a lot of bad guilds out there. As soon as the driver leaves, Errol turns and heads into the city. He spots the Cavalry's Guild recruiting knight swordsmen, and the Sword Road Guild, which is open to everyone. Suddenly, a girl runs to hug him, but ends up face-planting on the ground because Errol dodges without even looking. The girl is stunned, wondering how he dodged, and realizes he must be incredibly powerful to have sensed her presence. While Errol is standing there confused, the girl asks if he wants to join a guild. When he says yes, she launches into a full-on sales pitch, trying to push her new guild on him. She shows him the contract, but Errol simply turns his back and walks away. The girl grabs his belt, asking why he's leaving, and Errol straight up tells her she looks way too desperate. He figures her guild must be weak if they need members that badly. And the girl tries to play it off, claiming they're a super famous top guild. Errol isn't buying her act, so the girl, who introduces herself as Lilia, plays her final card. She offers to go on a date with him if he joins. He tells her he's not interested, leaving the girl speechless. He even thinks to himself that she's just like his older sister, acts like hot stuff, but is flat as a cutting board. Losing his patience, Errol asks Lilia the biggest guild in Brescia is, and she gets furious at the disrespect. Taking a deep breath to calm herself, Lilia tells him that the strongest is Blackblade, with 8 A-rank swordsmen. She points him in the direction, and Errol heads straight for their massive headquarters. A guard stops him at the door and asks what he wants. Errol says he wants to join the guild, and the guard tells him to take a test. He follows him inside and gets in line to register. When it's his turn, the receptionist explains that the guild only accepts advanced classes. The moment Errol says he's classless, the guy laughs in his face and tells him to leave. The other swordsmen in line start whispering, and Errol, confident in his abilities, asks if he can at least try the test. The receptionist refuses, saying he can't bend the rules. Suddenly, the room lights up as some A-rank swordsmen enter, and Errol decides to try his luck elsewhere. He goes to several other guilds, but they all reject him without a second thought. After getting door after door slammed in his face, Errol starts getting discouraged since he wasn't even allowed to attempt a single test. That's when he remembers his mother gave him a letter of recommendation for her old guild. At the time, Errol thought she was just being overprotective, but now it clicks. She knew he'd be rejected everywhere else. As Errol decides to find his mom's guild, Lilia shows up again, but he ignores her and keeps walking. She refuses to give up and follows him through the city, begging him to join and save her guild. Errol keeps saying no until Lilia gets so desperate she offers to lick his boots to convince him. He leaves her behind among the disgusted townsfolk, and Lilia vows never to give up. When Errol finally finds the guild's location, Lilia catches up to him one more time. She tells him he's welcome to join them and points to the enormous headquarters. Errol is confused, wondering why her guild is so weak if the building is so big. She reveals that they've lost their former glory.
Still, Lilia is confident she can restore the Dragon Fang Guild led by the Dual Swords King. Hearing that name, Errol remembers that his mother was also in that guild in her youth. He finally agrees to check it out. Lilia leads him inside and gets him a seat. Suddenly, Lilia's drunk dad pops out of nowhere and she gets furious with him, reminding him the doctor forbade him from drinking and that anyway, they don't have money for alcohol. His dad doesn't care, and Errol realizes that this man is the Dual Swords King. Noticing the man's missing arm, he hears the king tell him to leave, as the guild is about to be finished. Lilia tries to stop her dad, but he ignores her and walks out. She tells Errol that her father was one of the top swordsmen in Brescia, but his career ended after he lost his arm. She thinks Errol won't want to join their shabby guild now, but to her surprise, he decides to join. Lilia thinks she's dreaming, but Errol explains the other guilds would reject him anyway. Overjoyed, she shows him the guild contract, and he sits down to sign it. Once he's done, he hands the contract to Lilia, who only then finds out that Errol doesn't have a class. She thinks it's a prank, so she shows him his class certificate. After taking a closer look, Lilia calmly gets up, draws her sword, and threatens to give him the deceased class if he doesn't leave immediately. He asks why she wants him out, and she angrily retorts that she needs actual swordsmen. Remembering how Errol humiliated her, Lilia gets frustrated that she was played by a classless piece of trash. Just then, a woman named Rhiannon enters the room, and Lilia runs into her arms, telling her some classless jerk tried to scam her. Rhiannon recognizes Errol instantly. He's confused, so she explains they're from the same hometown. She reminds him they sparred as kids, but Errol still doesn't remember. Then Rhiannon says they met 5 years ago, but Errol replies that he'd never forget a beauty like her. While Rhiannon's face turns beet red, Errol finally remembers fighting a red-headed boy. But Rhiannon reveals that she is in fact Captain Evans' one and only daughter. Errol apologizes for not recognizing her, and Rhiannon suggests she probably looks different because of her long hair. Thinking to himself that it wasn't just the hair that changed, Errol shamelessly looks at her chest, while Lilia asks if he's the classless boy who defeated her. When Rhiannon confirms, Lilia is in total shock. Rhiannon says she won't lose this time because she's gotten a lot stronger. Still salty about her past defeat, she challenges Errol to a rematch. The girls take him to the guild's training grounds, with Lilia still in disbelief that Rhiannon would fight a classless nobody. However, Rhiannon admits that Errol is very powerful and is determined to beat him. Once both swordsmen are in the arena, Lilia acts as the referee and starts the match. Rhiannon opens with a twin slice, and Errol thinks he can easily stop it. To his surprise, the slices completely ignore his attack and slam into him. He's left wondering how Rhiannon got through. She drops her heavy weapon, explaining it's 5 times heavier than usual, so he can't counter her attack with the same technique. When she reveals that her brute swordsman class boosts her attack power, Errol is shocked and blocks her next strike. He praises Rhiannon's incredible progress as she unleashes a brutal onslaught. Errol steps back and admits he'll lose if he keeps facing her head-on. He wonders why Rhiannon is revealing her secrets, but she says it's worth it to defeat him. Then Errol taunts her, saying she can't hit him with her speed, and she charges forward to punish him. Rhiannon deflects Errol's sword and strikes at his body, but he vanishes into an afterimage. To Rhiannon's shock, he appears behind her and strikes her neck. She wonders how he dodged, but Errol reminds her it was just a shadow. Knowing the shadow skill is a supreme swordsman technique, Rhiannon is stunned.
She tries to attack Errol again, but he dodges everything, saying the technique is as easy as just moving really fast. Rhiannon feels insulted by the simplistic explanation, and he adds that it took a lot of effort to master. He vanishes and hits her with another blow, but notices his attacks aren't damaging her protection barrier. Rhiannon grins smugly and reveals that power swordsmen have boosted defense. She tries to attack again, but Errol sidesteps her and hits back with a counterattack. As he reveals he learned this counter from his mother, Rhiannon collapses in defeat. Watching the battle, Lilia is shocked but announces Errol's victory. Rhiannon is frustrated that she lost despite getting stronger, and Errol praises her for her skills. However, he adds that he's simply stronger than her, and Rhiannon starts crying. Lilia quickly rushes to comfort her, angry at Errol for making her cry. He's confused about why she's crying even though he praised her, and Rhiannon pretends she wasn't crying. Before running back to the guild, once she's inside, both he and Lilia hear her bawling about losing, even after all her training for the last 5 years. After all that, Lilia happily accepts Arel into their guild. He notices her complete change in attitude, but she just pretends she believed in his strength the entire time. Arel remembers her aggressive behavior, but lets it slide and asks why the guild is dying. Lilia awkwardly tells him they're in debt, and he asks how much. She calls him closer and whispers the number in his ear, but says they can pay it all off if they win an upcoming tournament. Lilia explains she needed 3 members to participate, and Arel asks why Reiner is staying at their shabby place. Lilia reveals that when Reiner first came to Brescia, she was rejected by all the big guilds. However, Lilia's father saw potential in her and kindly accepted her into Dragonfang. Arel nods, understanding that Reiner is repaying their kindness with her loyalty. He tells Lilia it'll be easy to pay off their debt with the tournament. However, she isn't confident since they'll be facing enemy teams of up to 5 members with just 3. While Lilia worries about the threatening enemies they're up against, Arel can't wait for the challenge. Looking forward to the tournament, Arel announces that fighting powerful opponents is the reason he came to Brescia. Secretly, the guildmaster had been watching them the whole time, and having noticed Arel's great potential, takes his leave.
After waking up, Arel takes a few seconds to remember that he's now part of the guild his mother belonged to. With that, he gets ready and goes down to the hall, where he finds his new companions. With Aion, he comments that he hadn't slept in a real bed in ages, and because of that, he ended up sleeping like a rock. At that moment, he glances at Reiner and notices she's still in a bad mood for losing the fight to him. However, there was nothing that could be done about it. As soon as everyone is gathered, Lilia has an important announcement mentioning that now that Dragonfang finally has the minimum of 3 members, they'll sign up for the city's swordsmanship championship this weekend. If they win, they'll get the money needed to raise the guild from the ashes. The competition is a single elimination format, 1-on-1, and the guild that runs out of fighters loses. The limit is 5 fighters per team, which means they, the Dragonfang trio, will have to fight at a numerical disadvantage. Reiner thinks it's going to be very difficult, but Lilia reassures her, saying they have an advantage by having 2 rank B swordswomen on the team, also mentioning the fact that rank A opponents are rare. In other words, it's a team with fewer members but higher quality. Arel, completely lost in the conversation, asks what the heck this rank thing is all about. Reiner, a bit irritated by his ignorance, explains that the rank represents a swordsman's individual strength ranging from D to A. Lilia, a bit more patient, adds that out of 500 swordsmen in Brescia, only about 20 are rank A. Since she and Reiner are rank B and Arel defeated Reiner, he probably is too. If they don't face any rank A's, they have a chance. The matchups will be announced at the Coliseum, so Lilia decides to head there to see who they'll be facing. After she leaves, Reiner goes to train, and Arel calls her by her name in a casual way, which irritates her. Ignoring her scowl, he asks what other abilities she has besides brute strength. Reluctantly, she reveals she has the Courage ability, which reduces the consumption of divine protection. Wanting to learn the technique, Arel stands up, grabs the girl's hands, and in his complete innocence, asks her to hit him with her sheathed sword, just as I kindly ask you to leave your like and your hype to strengthen this video. It costs you nothing and helps the channel grow and get stronger. Reiner refuses, but the guy insists that this is their chance to get closer. She doesn't understand how getting beat up could possibly bring them closer. Realizing he explained it poorly, Arel clarifies that to learn courage, he needs to take damage without using divine protection. Reiner takes offense, saying that abilities are blessings from the goddess and can't be learned, but Arel reminds her that she herself saw him use the twin blade slash, a technique of hers. And well, with such resistible arguments, he then convinces her and the two head to the training room. Once there, Reiner doesn't believe he can even lift her sword, which weighs 5 times more than a normal one. But even so, Arel wields it with ease, saying that it's not just about brute strength, and that perseverance beats talent. Hearing this, Reiner admits with frustration that he's probably right. In any case, she agrees to train him as long as he doesn't cry, because she won't go easy. At that moment, Lilia returns to the guild, running like a mad woman, bringing the worst possible news.
In the tournament, they'll face the most powerful guild in the city, the Black Blade, which has no less than 8 rank A swordsmen, and their leader George is as cunning as a snake. Even so, Lilia doesn't want to back down, mentioning that all they can do is train like crazy until the day of the competition. Then, she takes a closer look at her teammates and almost freaks out when she sees that Reiner has probably left Arel with a permanent injury just days before the tournament. But the redhead explains that they're just training, and Lilia wonders if she wasn't just taking her stress out on the rookie. A few days later, injured or not, it's a big day. In front of the Coliseum, the trio overhears 2 townspeople talking about the match. Since the Dragon's Fang hasn't fought in a long time, everyone is betting on their rivals, which makes Lilia furious. Lilia grumbles that their odds are 20-1 because not even the creator of this anime believes in them. However, trying to make lemonade out of lemons, she sees this as an opportunity to win money by betting on her own victory, mentioning she even took out a loan to bet on her own team. If they win, they'll fill their pockets with a real fortune. That's what we call self-esteem. Hearing the conversation, a man laughs. It's George himself, the leader of Black Blade. He comments that their rivals even recruited a classless guy and ironically says he's there to support them, as it's sad to see his old rival do so badly. In fact, he says that's why he arranged the match, a great chance for the Dragon Fang to win a lot of money. All Lilia has to do is defeat the several rank A swordsmen on the other side. The man laughs, but Lilia insists she's going to win. Finally, the moment arrives. Arel checks the duel bracket and doesn't see George's name, assuming they're taking it easy on them. Lilia, nervous, reminds him that all of them are rank A. Arel, however, remains calm, seeing the tournament as a chance to learn new abilities. The first fight is announced. Gio, the fencer from Black Blade, versus Arel, the classless guy. The crowd falls silent, and then a murmur begins, questioning the boy's audacity. Gio, arrogant, grumbles that he shouldn't have to face someone so weak.
Like it or not, the fight begins. The fencer uses an ultra-fast lunge to pierce his opponent's torso. However, Errol had left only a shadow as bait. Gio looks around and sees more shadows spread across the field. He's sure he can finish them all, but he didn't expect his opponent to be able to summon 4 shadows at the same time. With a clever attack from the enemy's blind spot, Errol closes in and hits Gio with a clean thrust. In disbelief, his opponent slowly falls, while Errol calmly comments that 4 shadows isn't much, since his mother can summon 5 without even trying. When the announcer declares the classless as the winner, the crowd goes wild. George, the rival, simply loses that disgusting smirk, something that even warms this narrator's heart. In the next duel, Errol unleashes the Twin Blade Slash and defeats another rank A. Then, facing an extremely fast fighter who uses kicks, Errol relies on his shadows to remain untouched and wins with a quick attack from behind. Lilia, who from the beginning proved she trusts in the true god of the impossible, gets excited at the possibility of Errol beating everyone. Next, Errol faces his most defensive opponent, a man with a huge shield and an extremely high natural defense. Since he can't break through his protection at once, he'll have to hit him repeatedly to wear it down. Nervous about not being able to hit Errol, the shield bearer accuses him of not being classless. To prove his point, the tank fakes a sword strike and spins to attack with his shield. Errol then uses his prediction technique, the hardest one his mother taught him, and with it he reads his rival's movement and kicks the shield, disarming him. In response to the man's doubt, Errol confirms that he learned that kick in the previous fight, and then gives another free demonstration, slamming his shin into the big guy's stomach. In disbelief, the man insists it's impossible to learn complex techniques so quickly, and Errol agrees, mentioning that truly learning them takes time, but copying a move is possible. Speaking of which, Errol picks up the rival's shield, and combining the quick lunge with the new weapon, delivers a powerful blow that defeats him. The audience starts accusing Errol of lying about his rank. In response, the championship committee reveals the competitor's class record for everyone to see. Using a crystal orb, the organization proves that Errol truly doesn't belong to any class. As a result, the crowd falls in love with the boy who was supposed to be the weakest, but has shown himself to be unbeatable. Seeing this, Lilia complains that if she had known how strong he was, she would have even pawned her father's secret weapons to bet more. The girl, showing that limits are something she doesn't know as she salivates before her prey, simply decides she's going to start the wedding preparations as she'll do anything to restore the guild, and the classless man before her might be the triumph they need.
However, the competition wasn't over. The last challenger is called to the ring, the master swordsman, Masamune. Arel is impressed by his rare sword, a katana. When the fight begins, even without the samurai having touched his weapon, Arel feels an overwhelming intensity coming from him and realizes that approaching recklessly could mean his end. Masamune reveals his strategy, to lure Arel in and finish him with the death strike. Hearing this, Arel advances. He was eager to learn the samurai's deadly move. The Black Blade says it's impossible because the moment he used the strike, Arel would be cast in an isekai genre anime. Even so, the boy trusts his speed and keeps moving forward, while his opponent still hasn't drawn his sword. This makes Arel wonder if the death strike comes straight from the sheath. The stalemate causes great hesitation in him, as he doesn't know whether to use his shadows, while the target is extremely focused. Nevertheless, he keeps advancing. When he reaches a proper distance, Masamune responds with an eye slash. But to his surprise, Arel manages to move faster than the sword and avoids the attack. Although Masamune was the fastest swordsman he had ever seen in the city, the classless one had been trained by someone even faster. With that, he counterattacks with the Piercing Tempest, a furious sequence of piercing strikes that hits the samurai's back, ending the duel and the tournament. Lilia is amazed as she witnesses the most lethal move of the Sword Princess class, while the announcer declares the victory of the Dragon's Fang Guild. The audience goes crazy as everyone had bet on Black Blade. Lilia and Reiner, on the other hand, hug each other when they realize they are now rich. After Arel leaves the ring, Lilia tries to give him a big hug, but, out of habit, he dodges, making the girl fall to the floor. Beside her, Reiner was also ready to hug him but quickly pretends that wasn't the case. Arel then suggests that she should take off her armor if she wanted to hug someone. I understood, and you understood, the concept behind that strategy. Lilia, for her part, makes it clear she wouldn't mind taking everything off, but when she tries to hug the guy again, she ends up on the floor once more. Meanwhile, watching Arel from afar, George promises he won't let this go. That night, our heroes celebrate their well-deserved victory with an impeccable banquet. Lilia wastes no time and starts drinking, exclaiming that nothing beats a celebratory drink. Arel is shocked, unable to believe she's old enough for that, while he and Reiner have to content themselves with juice. Lilia, ever persistent, once again pressures Arel to marry her, telling him to stop being so shy. For the 100th time, he rejects her, stating that it has nothing to do with shyness. She then tries to play the older woman who will take care of you card, but Arel cuts her off, saying he'd rather marry someone like Reiner. He adds that he's not focused on waifus right now, as his main goal, besides getting stronger, is to help Alex grow his channel by providing an incredible story for his recaps. He then asks you, the viewer, to help out with a like and build the hype to strengthen this video, and to consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell, because that way Annie Best Recaps can grow and prosper even more and bring you even better stories. The declaration leaves both girls in shock. Reiner can't take this being the chosen one business seriously. After all, people have always said she acts like a tough guy, citing her old short haircut and the fact that she's always carrying swords. Arel himself admits he mistook her for a boy at first, and Reiner agrees she has no feminine charm. Arel, however, takes a discreet peek at her assets and silently disagrees. For Reiner, it doesn't matter. Her focus is on becoming the world's greatest swordswoman. Lilia is astonished at how oblivious Reiner is, possessing incredible assets that Lilia considers a divine gift, yet not knowing how to use her best weapons. For Lilia, this is perfect, as it means Reiner is no threat. She goes on the attack, offering Arel a relaxing massage in his room. Reiner just sighs, tired of her friend's indecency. Lilia swears her intentions are innocent, but her expression betrays her. Arel, once again, says he'd prefer Reiner's help to relax, and to Lilia's surprise, Reiner agrees. The scene changes, and Reiner's massage is actually a beating with a sword. She questions if that's really relaxing,
and RL explains that being on the verge of death makes him stronger, as it's the only way to master the guts skill. For that, he needs to take a monumental beating, and he trusts Reiner for the task. He's flattered by his trust, but finds the idea of beating him while he's defenseless a bit brutal. At that moment, Lilia's drunk father, Rod, shows up telling everyone to be quiet. He assumes they're training out of frustration after defeat, but Lilia corrects him. They beat the Black Blade. Incredulous, he assumes they faced rookies, but Lilia clarifies that all their opponents were rank A. His disbelief only grows when she reveals that RL defeated them all by himself. The final piece of good news is that they've earned enough money to cover the guild's expenses, putting them on the path back to their former glory. Unfortunately, Rod throws cold water on their celebration, saying that someone as strong as RL will soon be stolen by a bigger guild, and they'll be back to square one. RL proudly says she's already taken care of that, as she and RL are getting married, but the protagonist denies the agreement. Depressed, her father tells her daughter to give up on saving the guild. RL finally intervenes, saying that Lilia is a complete idiot, but she's better than a loser who just gives up. Offended, Rod confronts him, but RL questions when he'll stop pitying himself, pointing out that he can still fight with his remaining arm. Rod explodes, saying RL doesn't understand his situation. As a dual wielder who can't use two swords, his skills are useless. RL admits he doesn't know the whole story, but reveals his own challenge. He was born classless and doesn't have a single skill of his own. Rod's frustration hits his limit and he leaves. Lilia thanks RL, hoping his words reached her father. Reiner agrees that Rod is a good person and just needs to rediscover his passion. RL expresses a desire to learn from Rod, showing that his focus is always on acquiring new skills. Lilia then suggests he visit a dungeon. Reiner is shocked to learn he's never heard of one. They explain that there's a huge dungeon under the city full of monsters and traps, which excites RL. Reiner is in too, wanting to gain experience for the upcoming Sword God competition. Of course, RL doesn't know what that is, and the girls realize how clueless he is. The tournament, as the name implies, determines the ultimate swordsman. Lilia, anticipating RL's interest, has already gotten him a registration form. When he takes it, however, he rips it in half. Reiner is confused, but RL reveals Lilia's attempt to have him sign a marriage certificate. She calls it an innocent little prank, and RL punishes her with a chokehold. Meanwhile, one of George's spies reports that RL and his friends are heading to the dungeon the next day. George sees this as the perfect opportunity to arrange a fatal accident, laughing like a maniac. The next morning, Lilia tries to wake RL with a kiss, but he wakes up first. She calls him her future husband and screams in pain as he starts crushing her skull, calling her a stalker. Frustrated by RL's discipline, she misunderstands when he ties her up, thinking it's some kind of fetish, but he simply leaves her behind. RL goes to Reiner's room, who is asleep and dreaming of becoming a powerful swordswoman to make her father proud. RL, moved, pats her head, but the moment is interrupted by Lilia's screams. Later, the group arrives at the dungeon. Using a teleportation seal, adventurers can travel to floors they've already visited. Lilia can go to level 12 and Reiner to level 14. RL is disappointed he can't go straight to the lower floors with Reiner, but Lilia promises to guide him via the shortest route, again trying to get him alone. RL, however, insists that Reiner join them, much to her delight.
After teleporting, they face living armor monsters. RL blocks their attacks with ease, but acknowledges their speed. He decapitates one, but realizes it doesn't stop them. Reiner explains they are empty armors moved by magic with no pain or weak points. RL quickly deduces that the solution is to aim for their legs. After they take them down, Reiner explains that they regenerate, making them perfect for training. Lilia brags about the fight even though she did nothing. This leads RL to ask about her class. She's a fencer. He loses interest as his goal is the advanced class Sword Princess, the same as his mother's, making Lilia's skills useless to him. Just then, they hear a cry for help from an injured man who says his friends are trapped in a room with a bad trap. Reiner wants to help immediately, but Lilia, showing her terrible side, wants to negotiate a payment. She argues that in the dungeon, it's every man for himself. The man recognizes Lilia from a magazine, but not from the beautiful swordswoman issue she imagined, but from an article that called her an idiot from a disgraced guild. Furious, Lilia wants to abandon him, but he offers a payment which she quickly accepts.
Aurel, however, is suspicious. He thinks the man has too much blood on him for someone who can still walk, remembering a time he could barely stand with similar injuries. He determines the wounds are fake, but decides to play along. The man leads them to a hidden room. Lilia freaks out at the sight of a pool of blood, but her concern turns to greed when she spots a gold coin. As she runs to grab it, she activates a teleportation trap. The man, whose name is Deal, reveals the setup, admitting his job was just to lead them there. He's shocked to realize the trap teleports everything in the room, including himself. They are all sent to a dead-end room on the lowest floor of the dungeon. Deal explains they've been sent where advanced-level sword gods await. One of these monsters appears before them. Aurel has to shove Lilia out of the way of an attack that destroys the wall behind them. Aurel, to everyone's surprise, recognizes the skill, Divine Ear Slash. The sword god displays incredible speed and power, but Aurel's training to obtain the Guts skill has paid off. The attacks barely scratch his divine protection. The monster uses a superior version of Aurel's teleport, the Divine Step, and Aurel realizes he's facing a super advanced class. Instead of fear, he feels excitement for the challenge. To the girl's astonishment, Aurel instantly learns Divine Step just by watching it. The monster then unleashes its true power, a skill called Divine Presence that drains everyone's energy, paralyzing them. Everyone collapses except for Aurel, who remains standing. He remembers his training with his mother. He struggled at first, but after years, he was able to withstand her crushing pressure. His mother taught him that after Divine Presence, the next attack would be Infinite Break, a terrifyingly fast slashing attack. At the time, he thought it was impossible to defend against, but she trained him relentlessly. Now he's thankful for that insane training. Realizing the monster is preparing Infinite Break, Aurel throws Lilia's gold coin to distract it, leaps up, and reveals that he has also learned to use the skill. He unleashes it on the sword god, shattering it to pieces. Lilia proudly calls him her husband, and he corrects her once again. Reiner asks how he was able to use such a skill. The answer is simple. His mother is a sword god. She pretended to be a sword princess to avoid attention. Reiner realizes that if she had known, she never would have challenged him. Aurel is glad his mother kept it a secret, otherwise they never would have become friends. A new light appears, revealing itself to be an exit teleportation spell. They decide to take Deal with them, much to his surprise. In a bar, Rod overhears some men bragging about trapping some fools in a dungeon, laughing about leaving Deal behind to get a bigger share of the pay. When they mention the Dragon's Fang Guild, Rod becomes furious and confronts them. George arrives, feigning concern and saying his men saw Lilia enter a dangerous room. Rod knows it's a lie and accuses him. As Rod tries to attack, his world collapses, thinking he's lost his daughter. But he's shocked when his daughter and her friends walk into the bar. George is horrified. Lilia accuses him of setting the trap, and Deal confesses everything. George admits to it, but hides behind the dungeon's rule that everyone is responsible for themselves. He calls Rod a useless drunk and leaves. Back at his guild, George erupts in rage. His plan to become the strongest swordsman by eliminating the competition has failed. He'd waited for years in the shadows of prodigies, and now a classless kid threatens to steal his title. Overcome with hatred, a sinister aura fills his room and a dark voice emanates from a mysterious sword that has appeared behind him. The sword says it consents to his grudge and will grant him the wish he so desperately wants. And that's where the episode ends, and now we have to wait another week to see how this story will continue. So are you enjoying it and want the continuation? Then leave a comment saying you want the next part, smash that like button and the hype to support this video, and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any updates.